Democratic money. What is it? How can we introduce it into Australia? And one possible approach. Democratic money gives everyone in society equal access and value to new and old money. For those who have always had access to electronic money, it is a shock to be denied access. I experienced this firsthand 4 years ago when I was refused a government-subsidised zero-interest loan of new money to install solar panels on our house. I was told that in compensation I would be given a grant of old money of much lower value to help me buy an induction stove. The explanation was that my wife and I were at an age where they wouldn't give us a loan of new money. The loans are only given to those who could borrow an interest-bearing loan to install solar panels. This means that 60% of Australia's Canberra population can't access regular government subsidised loans. These restrictions on access to electronic money are repeated throughout the economy. Loans are autocratic and undemocratic and are the reason for our recurring financial crises, endemic inflation, and the gross maldistribution of wealth in many communities. Australia is rapidly approaching the USA, where 60% of the population live paycheck to paycheck. The Australian Mint in Canberra sells coins at the same price to all buyers. With these coins, consumers can purchase the same goods and services at uniform prices, making coins a democratic form of currency. The same applies to banknotes. You can buy new ones whenever you wish. However, electronic money is undemocratic. Only some people can buy new electronic money because it is purchased through a bank using loans, and the bank decides who gets it and what it costs them. However, did you know that the bank shareholders receive new money at no cost and pay no interest? They receive capital gains whenever a regular borrower's loan account is debited with interest and fees. Imagine being given new money that costs nothing to produce simply because you hold shares in the bank. A person who purchased $1,000 worth of Commonwealth Bank shares in 1991 would now hold shares worth at least $471,000. It's no wonder that the Commonwealth Bank is Australia's biggest company. Everyone would like shares in CBA. It gets worse. High net worth individuals and large companies, particularly multinational companies, negotiate with banks to secure loans at low or zero interest rates with favourable repayment schedules through commercial in confidence arrangements with banks. Regulators know these practices, but individuals cannot challenge the banks due to existing laws and regulations. I know this because I've tried many regulators and policy bodies, including the Productivity Commission, the Reserve Bank, the ATO, and the Australian Financial Complaints Authority. So, what is electronic money? Today, electronic money is still sovereign money. It is owned by the King and his court, who assert their ownership and determine who gets the loans and at what cost. So, who is the King and who makes up the court? In some countries, like Russia, dictators such as Putin act as kings, while their fellow oligarchs represent the courts. However, in most countries, there aren't literal kings with control over money. Instead, various groups of wealthy individuals hold this power. Typically, they are represented on boards or institutions like the Reserve Bank Board and other advisory bodies that set prices on monopolies like money, water, and electricity. These groups usually consist of lawyers or economists employed or obligated to the wealthy who participate in decisions regarding financial matters and the distribution of money. While the King is not yet present in Australia, the court comprises wealthy individuals and their advisors, and they determine the rules for distributing new money. They act in their own interests, unfortunately, just like all oligarchs. So, what do the wealthy do with the privileges they enjoy? I have pointed out that they have favourable access to new capital, allowing them to obtain loans at little or no cost, while the rest of us pay exorbitant interest rates and fees of double the advertised amount. Furthermore, many of these most profitable companies in Australia pay little to no tax. I will let you explore one of the methods illustrated in the diagrams later. The most troubling aspect of their behaviour is that it diminishes the economy's capacity to generate wealth, making the whole community poorer. Richardson and Gruden from the Australia Institute published a graph illustrating how most new wealth or new money goes to the top 10%, while the remaining 90% receives little to no share of that wealth. This starkly contrasts with the 1950s and 60s, when new wealth was evenly distributed throughout society. It is important to understand that making a profit does not create new money, and profits should be shared with buyers. When you don't do this, you get the Commonwealth Bank situation where the seller gets wealthy while the buyer becomes a pauper. Profits are made when more money is collected for goods and services than it costs to produce or obtain them. This is not making money. Making money is creating new money, which happens when the currency issuer puts money into a bank account. Profits are a redistribution of existing money. Well, what can you do about it? Well, it turns out we together can do quite a bit. The first step is to exercise our power at the ballot box. We can urge politicians at all levels to make electronic money democratic. It's absurd that even governments pay double interest, and it warrants their attention. We should lobby our representatives to allow regulators to limit the practice of double interest payments. Additionally, we should advocate for new money to be used exclusively for building community assets such as roads, schools, hospitals, parking facilities, electricity supplies, water supplies, rather than using it to purchase existing assets. It raises an important question. Why do we need to collect taxes to build community infrastructure when we could create the money needed for most of these projects? However, there's still more that we can do. We can show how communities can get money and build assets. In housing, we can form communities consisting of homeowners, renters and investors to democratise our existing housing assets and mortgages by creating what I'm calling permanent local housing markets. We don't have to participate in the loan game. Instead, we can leverage our assets and explore opportunities that have been created if we had electronic democratic money. So, let's examine the differences between a permanent home market and a traditional real estate market. In a traditional market, buying a house involves multiple steps and costs about 5% of the home's total price. In contrast, the permanent local home market simplifies this process to one step, allowing for a quick response. A prospective buyer asks if a property is available, and if there is, they request that the PHM evaluate their request on the spot. Selling a house in this market is cost-free. The occupier announces that they are leaving, and when they know how much their shares are worth, and when they're leaving, they know how to access the money when they do leave, or the shares when they do leave. The buyers and sellers have access to a spreadsheet, something like this. Here, this is what is a normal bank loan. It's a loan for $1 million. It needs a deposit of $200,000. So the income after tax of the person is $150,000, 6%, and it'll take 30 years to buy the house of $1 million. And the repayments in order to buy it over 30 years are $61,000, or about 40% of the person's salary. If we use a permanent home market, the years drop, same conditions, but the years to pay it back drop to 13 if you're still paying 40% of your salary. And if you can't pay 40% of your salary, you pay 25% of your salary, it'll take 27 years. Again, both cases, you're paying about half the amount. What about the investor? Well, the investor could get if they invest $1 million in housing, then they will get an annuity of $100,000 every year, inflation adjusted, for 20 years. If they get a regular superannuation allocated pension, they'll get $100,000, but only for 10 years. In other words, they get twice the amount of money. What about this marketplace? Well, let's assume that there are 9 houses and they're all $1 million or thereabouts, or no, actually we've gone from up to $2 million. Here, after each year, the capital gains about $300,000, and the company has got a cash to operate the company of $234,000. The company makes a loss because of depreciation, but that just reduces or eliminates the tax that they have to pay. Again, we can examine that, but these companies will be quite profitable. So what's going on here? Well, the first thing you have to do, of course, is that you've got to get rid of sovereign money. Now, we can do that by negotiating with a bank, probably a community bank, to get reduce the cost of interest. But importantly, what we do is we monetize our assets, not through converting it into money, but converting them into shares that are the same value as the houses that we've converted them into. How does this all work in practice? Well, investors will receive an additional 5% in shares each year, essentially as a dividend, but they must sell at least 10% annually to occupiers or other investors. This approach stimulates financial activity. It moves money of the payments made by occupiers. 50% is used to purchase shares from investors, while the remaining 50% is allocated for the company's operational expenses. Given the high returns and the lack of costs associated with buying and selling shares, most members are likely to treat their share accounts like high-interest savings account. So there will be a lot of demand for them as a place to put money. An interesting aspect of this system is that people can remain in their homes while selling shares in their houses. They can use the 25% of their income to repay and repurchase those shares. This arrangement allows individuals to access the home equity as additional income when needed, provided that the local market accepts their proposal. If it doesn't, the occupants can move to another permanent home market because moving is cost-free between different permanent home markets. There's no reason why the consumers and users of government assets shouldn't have an ownership stake. Why do we allow multinational companies to own our roads and our electricity supplies? Why can't we own them ourselves? For example, suburban residents could collect share ownership of parking spaces in central shopping districts. Why do we have to use a Hong Kong company to run our parking places? Thank you for listening. My name is Kevin Cox, and you can reach me at this phone number or email address. If you're in the ACT area, please call me and we can meet for a cup of coffee. Thank you.